From the AM/FM 24/7 radio network, broadcasting from AM and FM stations around the country. Welcome to the Small Business Administration award-winning School for Startups Radio, where we talk all things small business and entrepreneurship. Now, here is your host, the guy that believes anyone can be a successful entrepreneur, because entrepreneurship is not about creativity, risk, or passion, Jim Beach.
Welcome back to School for Startups Radio. I hope you're using today to keep yourself motivated, to keep yourself inspired, and just to continue the hard fight of entrepreneurship. You know it is a roller coaster. I am very excited to introduce you to my next guest. I was incredibly honored to sit next to him the night that he was inducted into the Entrepreneurship Hall of Fame. Ray Margiano, PhD, is the CEO and co-founder of Balance Walking, which is a chain of retail stores devoted to your entire body, to exercise, in particular to your body alignment. He is also the founder and CEO of a company called Foot Solutions, which he grew to over 200 stores in 16 countries, an amazing accomplishment. Ray, thank you for being on the show again. Welcome back. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Jim, and thank you so much for having me.
Well, it is my honor. It's pretty rare that I get to talk to someone who is in any Hall of Fame, much less the Entrepreneurship Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out how they got me in there.
Well, you deserve it. I mean, an amazing accomplishment, one of the largest franchises out there, and you're just doing amazing things. I also have a copy of the book that you wrote called Balance Walking, Turn Back the Clock, on how to use walking as a great exercise vehicle. Let's start there, Ray. Talk to us about your book, what you think that we should be doing in terms of exercise, and I don't know, let's just start there.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Actually, it's kind of funny because I have a younger daughter at home that we went to the beach, and she asked me how come my stomach was getting so big. And it was a cue for me that I was going to have to lose some weight and get back into shape. And when I was younger, I used to do a lot of cross-country skiing. I spent a lot of time in Europe where they do pole walking. So I came up with a concept that's, because time is such an issue for most people today, especially in the U.S., I came up with a 15-minute-a-day program. The Balance Walking incorporates walking poles that use about 90% of your muscle mass. You can increase your workout to about twice what you would get out of a regular walk. So actually in 15 minutes a day, you will see results and feel results. Within 10 days, I start losing weight and tightening up. And what I liked about it is you can take the poles any place. You can do it any place, anytime. So with that, we start doing a number of different things. We do reach-out programs to retirement communities. We're involved with Susan G. Komen, ping pole walking. We've done work with Heart Foundation, arthritic, diabetics. So anybody that needs to exercise or wants to get in shape but doesn't want to join a club and wants to spend as little time as possible, this concept will work for them. That's sort of how I got into it, really just to help myself out. And then I liked it so much, I decided to, on many of the plane rides that I take all over the place, to start writing a book. I'm working on my third one now, which is really Balance Walking for actually 50 and older. So I really drilled down the concept to specific groups that could use the service.
Ray, I walk all day. We all walk all day. Of course, us Americans, we're so lazy. We drive 100 yards if we can, but still we do a lot of walking. Does just using the poles, like the ski poles, really make that much of a difference?
Yeah, absolutely. It activates about 90% of your muscle mass. So now you're getting your shoulders, chest, upper torso in. Also helps with body alignment, which is very critical. So it will reduce the pressure and pain on your ankles, knees, hips, and lower back and neck. This is something that's been documented over the years. Cross-country skiing is very, very aggressive exercising. A lot of people wouldn't be able to do it, but the walking, just regular walking with the poles will give you a dramatic increase, and there's been a number of studies done to validate that.
All right. Very, very interesting. When I met you about a year and a half ago, you looked to me like you were in great shape, so it must be working. Your daughter must be very happy now, huh?
Yeah, I've always taken care of myself, and the time sort of tends to get away. The busier you get, the less time you have to take care of yourself. And I think that's one of the items that you talked about, that it is important to do that, because at the end of the day, you just can't work all the time. In fact, looking back on myself, I'm a workaholic, and I accept it. I started with my dad when I was 10 and working in the garage, and we were open 7 days a week, so I didn't know anything better. I thought you're always supposed to work 7 days a week, and I still find myself doing it. So after all this time, it's easy to get caught up in work, especially if you like what you're doing.
That is very, very true. Let's go back to the very beginning. You had some amazing jobs at places like Sikorsky Helicopters and some pretty impressive things like that. How did you get into the shoe heel repair business? Your first franchise, Heel Quik, grew to just be a phenomenon, 700 stores. How did that start, and what did your family think about that?
Well, actually, Heel Quik, I left the corporate world in 84, started Heel Quik in 85. And it's kind of funny because, I have a master's in computer science, and I was running a division at that time down here in Atlanta. That's how I got here, with a company called Bostitch Auto Solar. They were based up in Rhode Island. I got transferred down to run a division that was losing money for 5 years, with the objective to either turn it around in a year or sell it. One of the product lines happened to be shoe repair equipment and equipment used in labs for modifications to shoes and orthotics. So I started looking at that niche and came up with a couple ideas that I thought I could expand it, and went back to corporate, presented it 3 years in a row. They rejected it, saying they didn't want to get into the retail side of the business. By that time, I had convinced myself that, gee, this is a good idea. If you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it. So I left the company in very good standing and started Heel Quik. My dad was not impressed. He thought I could have had the garages. Why was I going to shoe repair after going to college? And then after the first couple of years, we grew a couple hundred stores. Then it was, well, you did a good thing. So it was easy to convince them once we were successful. But that was just sort of a crazy transition. I mean, I didn't know anything about shoe repair when I ran that company, and just saw the idea and sort of ran with it. So I think for most entrepreneurs out there, it starts with either them having an idea, working someplace and doing something that may be a little different or they're really good at, and they want to develop it and grow it. I knew nothing about franchising. I had no money. I had to borrow money to start the company. I couldn't afford to pay a lawyer. I shouldn't even say this, to do the franchise agreement. I ordered a couple franchise agreements from, I think, a dry cleaning company and a retail store. Wrote my own agreement up, then took it to a lawyer who charged me a few $100s an hour, and said what a great agreement I had. So I saved thousands of dollars on just replicating an agreement. That's how I started. So I had to bootstrap everything right from the beginning.
Excellent. But that's what made it so strong, I would argue, in the end. And, you maintained a lot of equity that way, didn't you? Wasn't that hard battle worth it in the end?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess there's two trains of thought there. Certainly, if you're bootstrapping and building a company up from scratch and you have to pay for everything as you go along, you're a lot more conservative and a lot more careful with what you do and how you gamble that money as you're growing your company. So I think for those people that raise a bunch of money at the beginning and just throw it against the wall hoping something will stick, I think the failure rate is higher there because it's easy come, easy go. You don't really think about it until there's nothing left. So bootstrapping is pretty much in my genes, and even with Foot Solutions, I did the same thing. I started, with no funding from the outside and just built it from scratch.
Would you, if I gave you $1 million to go start a new business, would you take the money, or would you say, no, I think I'd rather start it with 1,000 because it would be better in the end?
Well, for me, I left the corporate world because I was always entrepreneurial and pretty much was always thinking to the future. And most of the time when I sat in meetings in the corporate world, not to take anything away from the corporate world, but, there was always discussions and they moved very slow for me. And at the end of the day, for the companies I worked with, I saved them a lot of money and made them a lot of money. But at the end of the day, the the company got that money, not me. So I think the people that are entrepreneurial, someplace along the way, want to be rewarded for what they do, and the only way you really can do that is if you are the company, or at least you're part of the company, holding shares in the company.
Right. Well, I certainly agree with that. How quickly after Heel Quik started did you realize that you were on to something just huge?
You know what? I didn't know it, because when I first started, I had no idea I was going to be franchising. I did probably about 20 stores, borrowing money from everybody I could to open stores that were very successful. My first store was in Cumberland Mall right here in Atlanta. The store's still there. My second store was Lenox Square. The store's still there. So they opened up in '85, and they're still out there fixing shoes. But as I grew the company stores, I ended up with stores in Boston, Chicago, L.A., and it was a nightmare. We were in malls. I'd get a call from the mall, your store's not open, get it open, or I'm finding you, I'm 3,000 miles away. That's when I started thinking about franchising. Plus, I either had to bring in a major capital investor to have the money to continue to grow. So franchising became a way for me to grow using other people's money, meaning that they would have their own business and I get a small slice and they get a bigger slice. So franchising for me was really the way I grew. I had no idea it was going to grow as much as it did. I love travel. That's really why I ended up international. I've done business probably in about 50 countries, which for me was just like a dream come true, because I got to go all over the world and see a lot of places and meet a lot of people and enjoy a lifestyle that was very different and unique from going into work at the corporate world every day.
Sure. Ray, with the advent of all of these $500 sneakers and all of that, and the way that Americans are becoming so disposable, are we still repairing our shoes the way we did 50 years ago or even 25 years ago, or do we just wear them and throw them away as us lazy Americans do?
That's a great question. Actually, in the 90s, you mentioned before, there is a cycle to everything, and there certainly is in the business. And now I can say I've been through it twice. When you're growing a business and everything is going well, you think nothing can go wrong. The bottom line is, in the 90s, I was doing a lot of international, and we made a lot of money by selling equipment and supplies as well internationally. In the early 90s, technologically, with the computers advancing, all of a sudden in the U.S. for the first time was on the other end of the spectrum, meaning the dollar was stronger than a lot of places I was doing business. So it became 2 to 3 times more valuable, which put a real pressure on my business, which there wasn't enough profit to be able to eat a multiple of 2 or 3 times. China entered into the production of shoes. So the U.S. had a great thriving economy in the early 90s. You had shoes coming in that were virtually throwaway. At the same time, they start using a lot of man-made materials and getting away from leather and handmade goods. So everything that could go wrong in the industry did. When I started Heel Quik, there were probably about 40,000 shoe repair shops in the United States. By 95, it was probably down to about 5,000. So I ended up being in an element there that was in complete free fall. And I guess if you ever wondered what it was like to be a blacksmith, those were the shoes I felt like I was in, watching the cars drive by.
Right.
So I had to do something different, even though there's several hundred Heel Quiks still out there. Then I started focusing on the medical side of the business and start working on the orthotics and a lab making custom orthotics and actually making shoes for the medical community. That's sort of what led to Foot Solutions. So it was sort of like one thing led to the other for really survival purposes.
Well, don't you think it's always that way for entrepreneurs? In my career, Ray, if I were to try to tell you where I would be 5 years from now, I'd get it 100% wrong. 5 years ago, if you said, what are you going to be doing today, I would have been 180 degrees off. Has your career been that way too?
Yeah, I just do the best at what I'm doing at the time, and if you asked me what I wanted to be when I grow up, I still couldn't tell you. I mean, I don't know. My passion goes wherever I go. So even in the corporate world, whatever job I held or when I started my own companies, I just immersed myself completely and did the best I could do at any job I ever held. It was never like you said, it was never sitting back here planning that where am I going to be in 5 years. I will tell you one short story, though, that made me like that. When I first job out of college at Sikorsky Aircraft, and by the way, I worked 50 hours a week while I was going to college in my dad's garage. So I was, like I said, I was a workaholic. In 5 years, my boss that hired me came into my office and wanted to congratulate me. This is at Sikorsky Aircraft now. I went to University of New Haven. He went to Yale. Big difference in schools, obviously. So, and that makes the story, I think, even a little bit more funny. So he came out in my office to congratulate me, and I had no idea what he was talking about. And I said, "What are you talking about, John?" And he said, "You were the first one when I asked this question to in the interview, where did you want to be in 5 years, that ever said this to me?" And I didn't even remember the question or the answer. I said, "What did I say?" He said, "You said you wanted to be sitting in my seat in 5 years." Okay. So he congratulated me because I wasn't sitting in his seat. I was sitting in his boss's seat. So he said I succeeded and beat my own 5-year goal.
That is really interesting. I did the exact same thing in an interview with Coca-Cola, Ray. I worked at Coca-Cola Japan, saved them $1 billion over 10 years, decided to come back to Coca-Cola Atlanta. They interviewed me. They asked me what my goal was. I said, I want to be the CEO, and I didn't get the job. So interesting. Looks like
somebody was protecting themselves.
Yeah, maybe, or it looks like you did better job of politics than I did. So anyway, Ray, is now a good time or a bad time to be an entrepreneur? It seems to me like the odds are stacked against us a little more than normal right now. What's your opinion?
Well, I think there's two sides to this. First of all, right now, it's very, very difficult to get money. Banks are not loaning small businesses. Obviously, with the current situation and the low interest rates, it's not conducive for many of the people that do loan money to loan it because they're making more money in other ways. So getting access to capital and funds to grow a business is very, very difficult. It's impacted many industries. I think in the franchising industry, last year about 40% of the franchises sold weren't funded. So people can't borrow money unless they're really in a strong financial situation. And unfortunately in America, people tend to live day to day. Many Europeans and other countries, people have to save to buy a house and other things, so they save a lot more of their money. Here we tend to spend it as we go along. So our whole mindset is a little different than other countries. So the difficult part is getting funding. On the other side, obviously we've been in an economic meltdown for the last 5 years. Anytime things start coming back to normal, and it will come back to normal, but it will be, in my mind, a very slow recovery, probably over the next 3 to 5 years, with small incremental growth. Small business usually leads that recovery. So usually when there is an economic recovery, and this, if you go back in history, this has been true over and over again, small business and franchising usually lead that recovery, and it's a great time to grow because during that time you get a growth spurt that you wouldn't normally get. So the catch-22 is being in the right position and being able to get access to money as the growth opportunity comes. It will come. It's just a question of timing and being in the right place at the right time. So I think you have the best of one world and the worst of the other side of it.
Is it about being in the right place at the right time or putting yourself in the right place at the right time?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a friend of mine that said, would you rather be smart or lucky? And lucky wins every time, because you can be the smartest person in the world, but if you're not lucky, things are not going to happen for you. So it's a combination of both things, and you're right. I think being able to recognize when you're in the right spot at that time is probably more critical, because how many people say that they thought of that idea, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, but never did it? So someplace along the way, you it's not just thinking about it. You have to sort of put all the cards on the table and go for it. And that's really, I think, what sets entrepreneurs apart.
Right. I totally agree. If one of your children came to you and said, Dad, I want to start a business, what advice would you give them, and would you let them?
Yeah, because I am entrepreneurial by nature, and I guess it was passed on to me by my dad. I would certainly help them in any way I could.
Give them money?
Yes, but I think I would treat it as a loan, and they're going to have to build a success, or I would give them a start, what I call a seed start, and say, this is for you. Now you're going to go out and do it. But you have to do it. You can't keep coming back to the well, because the well doesn't exist. There's no money tree out back. And I think they have to learn the hard way there that basically if they have $100 to spend, that's it. They can't go out and spend $200. They have to work with $100. So I think it's very critical to not try to make it too easy, because they have to sort of develop their own tough skin and be able to make the tough decisions. And certainly there's a lot of things I learned over time that I would do differently today, but I would try to help them with that knowledge. But at the same time, they still have to make their own decisions. But it's always good to be able to talk to somebody. And over the years, nobody ever makes it by themselves. I mean, I've talked to hundreds of people that have given me good advice and been mentors and people that have been very supportive for nothing at all, just to help out. So I try to do the same thing with the vet programs we're involved with, and other people in franchising or small business. I would do the same for my children, absolutely.
Ray, you just said something interesting, that no one makes it alone. A lot of the political discussion going on right now says that government's a big part of that. Government, good or bad for the entrepreneur?
Well, I think if you're in government, you see it one way, and if you're on the outside, you see it another way. I don't know how government has helped small business. In fact, I think they do more to make it more difficult to succeed. And I think most entrepreneurs will say that. I mean, the bottom line is it's true that we're using the roads and other services that are out there, but we're paying for them too. So, I mean, I don't think there's anything for free here. This is the greatest country in the world, because anybody could make it here if they want to, or if they work hard enough and get a couple of breaks. So I think, the playing field here, in my mind, is level for everybody. I grew up in a blue-collar family that is, first-generation Italians, and I think a lot of people that even commit to the States today are just hardworking people looking for that opportunity and break. And it's a bell-shaped curve. Is everybody going to make it? No. There's going to be a percentage on the top, percentage on the bottom, and a whole percentage in the middle. And everybody that makes it doesn't stay there. I mean, look at how many people have been really successful and then lost everything. So it is something where there's no guarantee in life or anything.
Ray, that was the fastest 22 minutes I have ever done. I love talking to you, but unfortunately we have run out of time. You're just absolutely fascinating. Biggest mistake you've ever made in under 30 seconds?
Not paying myself when I should have, and putting everything back in multiple times. Interesting,
because I'm the exact same way. I'm always coming home on Friday, and my wife goes, "Did you pay yourself today?" And I go, "No, I bought some advertising," and then I sleep on the sofa.
Know it very well.
Ray. Oh, well, the next time you have to sleep on the sofa, you can sleep on my sofa at my house. Ray, come on over. Thank you so much for being with us today. I love, love, love your story. How can people buy your book and find out more about Foot Solutions?
They can go to our websites, footsolutions.com, balancewalking.com. My email, if anybody ever wants to communicate with me, is ceo@footsolutions.com. I love talking to people and helping or advising, so I'm here.
Ray Margiano, PhD, thank you so very, very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Jim. Have a great day.
You too.
Taking care of business.